Hello, I'm Diego Lujan, the owner of Alpha Elite Plumbing. Like most of you, our co-workers and their families have been hearing a lot about the coronavirus, and many people are concerned about their health. I would like to update everyone on how our organization is taking steps to ensure our business is open and ready to serve you. Everyone at Alpha Elite knows that it's our job to keep people healthy by offering services that ensure proper plumbing practices, which plays a large role in keeping your home clean and safe. With all the developments around recent public health concerns, we want our customers and their families to know how we have stepped up our focus on our operations. We are taking every precaution to ensure we do our part to increase public health by creating a higher standard of hygiene that ensures multiple deep cleanings of our company vehicles each day, checking on our employees and ensuring anyone feeling ill doesn't come to work. We are also ensuring our equipment is sanitized before and after we come into any home or any business. Good plumbing techniques can save lives. We take this responsibility very seriously. The entire team at Alpha Elite wants to remind people that public health experts recommend we all spend more time washing our hands and working together for the safety of our community. I'm a man of firm faith, and I know that God is on our side. He is the one giving us the calling to help anyone in need, so no fear will stop us. Alpha Elite is committed and driven to ensure our leadership within the community is at the forefront on the safety and the well-being of our customers and our friends. We are committed to serving you, your family, and this community. Stay positive, stay blessed, stay safe. Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the Colorado Springs Hispanic Chamber of Commerce on Values Speaker Series. This is our fourth edition of our popular speaking series, and today we have our featured speaker, Juana Bordas. We'd like to thank our title sponsor, Alpha Elite Plumbing and Heat, and also our event sponsor today, the Springs Funeral Services. Juana Bordas immigrated to the U.S. from Nicaragua on a banana boat. The youngest daughter in a family of 8, she was the first to go to college. She learned leadership from her hardworking parents, especially her mother, Maria, who cooked food and scrubbed floors in the school lunchroom so Juana could get a scholarship to a Catholic school. Their vision, determination, and sacrifice taught me the essence of servant leadership. Her early years would instill in her a desire to give back, to make a contribution, and to assist other Latinos as find their place in society. Upon graduation from college, she joined the Peace Corps and worked in the barrios of Santiago, Chile, assisting women from cooperatives so they would feed their children. Juana later received the Franklin Williams Award from the U.S. Peace Corps for her lifelong commitment to advancing communities of color. Juana was the founder of Denver's Mi Casa Women's Center and served as executive director. Today, Mi Casa is recognized as a national model for women's empowerment. She was founding president of the National Hispana Leadership Institute, the only program in America that prepares Latinas for national leadership. In 2001, she founded the Circle of Latina Leadership to prepare the next generation of leaders. To date, 165 women have completed the program. For her extensive work with Latinas, she was commended by Latina Style magazine for creating a nation of Latina leaders. Her book, Salsa, Soul, and Spirit, Leadership for a Multicultural Age, won the International Latino Book Award for Best Leadership Book in 2008. Juana served as advisor to Harvard's Hispanic Journal on Public Policy, the Kellogg National Fellows Program, as board vice chair of the Greenleaf Center for Servant Leadership, and a trustee of the International Leadership Association. She received from Union Institute in 2009. Juana was selected as a Wise Woman Award by the National Center for Women's Policy Studies and is the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame in 2000, as is in the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame. In 2009, the Denver Post and the Colorado Women's Foundation named her the Colorado Unique Women of the Year. She is president of Mestiza Leadership International, a company that focuses on leadership, diversity, and organizational change. Her new book, The Power of Latino Leadership, was released in May of 2013. Please welcome today, Juana Bordas.
Buenas tardes a todos. What a pleasure to be with you here today. And I know when I hear all that stuff, trust me, I've been doing this for a long time. And during COVID, I did not go to the hairdresser, so I now have white hair. So anybody want to tell me how it looks, just pop me an email. It's been kind of fun. I'm not sure I'm going to keep it, but in any case, change is good. Thank you so much for inviting me. I did live in Colorado Springs for a while. I had the privilege of going through the Center for Creative Leadership. And when I did the National Hispano Leadership Institute, we used to send, I'm very proud of this, over 800 Latinas have attended the center, which is right in your backyard and is the premier corporate training center in the world. After about 7 years of working with me, they offered me a job to come train, which was really fantastic because I had been running organizations, Mi Casa and the Hispana Institute, and I really wanted to go and learn leadership because it's a lifelong journey. I really believe it's a lifelong journey. But I also believe that Latinos were trained for leadership, that we have been prepared for leadership through our journeys, through immigration, through the 500 years that our leaders have relentlessly fought for our community and our people to keep advancing and making a contribution, because that's part of our culture. I want to say to you that are not Latino that are with us today, welcome, bienvenidos, because you know, if you grew up in America as a Latino, you had to learn a lot of things like, you know, I went to a school not speaking English. So I had to learn English. And, you know, as I grew up, I had to learn the different cultural systems that come out of the dominant culture and go to the universities and go to graduate school. And so I really do know how to function in two worlds. And becoming Latino during Hispanic Heritage Month, you're welcome to join us, gives you an opportunity, if you're not Latino, to become what I call a Latino by corazón, someone who loves our culture, welcomes us as we welcome you. So you heard a little bit about my history from Joe, and I want to commend him for the great work he's doing with the Colorado Springs Chamber. You know, I've dedicated a lot of my life building Hispanic organizations because I believe it is in our numbers and our organizations in working together, in having that common focus about helping our kids live in a better world and our community participating equally in society. I think we do that, and we can do that through our organizations. You know, that's where the power is. That's where we learn from each other. That's where we get the energy to keep doing our work. So congratulations, Joe, for having the chamber, and for all of you for taking this time to learn, to grow, and to get better at what you do. I am going to talk a little bit about my business, but I do want to tell you that I'm a social entrepreneur. In other words, when I went to Mi Casa, I was like 35 years old, and they always say in leadership that who's the leader? The one who steps up, and the one who stays, and the one who kind of does the heavy lifting. So we had 7 women who were kind of putting this organization together, and all of a sudden we got some money to hire somebody, and I said, oh, this is great, what are we going to do? And they all looked at me. And so I became the director of Mi Casa, and that's probably the first leadership lesson. And that is, you know, I have a strong belief in destino, in destiny, that each one of us are totally and completely unique, that the Great Spirit, God, never makes anything twice. And so you have a special role to play in life and a special contribution to make. And so part of this happens through opportunities that are given to you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as I move forward. And so I had never directed an organization. Many of us are thrown into things. Those of you who started businesses, you've never started a business, but Latinos are entrepreneurs, aren't we? We have the fastest growing entrepreneurial sector in the United States. And Latino women even are starting businesses at a higher rate than Latino men. So we have that entrepreneurial spirit, that's how we thrived and survived through so many difficulties. And I want to start by talking about my parents because, Joe mentioned that I have been inspired by them my entire life. And I really have. I have to tell you, 40% of Latino growth in the last century was through immigration. And so our community itself has that immigrant can-do spirit, that risk-taking, that innovation, the idea that you can have a vision and a dream for the future. And so my parents had that. But the thing that I think I didn't realize until I was older was the actual sacrifice that they made. My mother in particular had a 5th grade education. And when she came here, she gave up her country. She gave up her language. She gave up her familia, the people that held her in their arms as she grew up and as she was a woman in Nicaragua. But I think more than that, she gave up the respeto, the respect that she had in her own community. Because when we see our immigrants working so hard, like she did, scrubbing floors and cooking food, or putting on roofs in the sun, or doing the construction, doing such hard work, but they do it because they're leaders. I didn't know my mother would be the greatest servant leader I ever met, because the greatest servant leader lives their life in a way that they help others, they develop others, they empower others, they serve others. And, so I didn't know that my mother, in her humble way, raising 8 children, working 6 days a week, coming home and cooking and taking care of the family, that she was showing me what responsibility was, what leadership was, what service was, what vision was, what stamina was, what determination was, but most important, what it was like to have a vision for the future. So when she finished, as she was working, Latinos are a collective culture. We work together. And whether it's through our large extended families or through our communities, or just when we get together to do an organization or to do an event or even a quinceañera or a wedding, everybody brings something and we share and we put it together. That's how we roll, right? And so I had 2 older sisters who had come to the United States before the family. They came with my father. They saved money to bring us all to the United States. And, like Joe said, I came on a banana boat. I came in the hull of a banana boat. They had some bunk beds in a back room, and the rest of the boat was filled with plátanos, with bananas, with cocos, with coconuts, and a few tarantulas. So here we come, and when I got out of the boat, I always joke and I go, because I had grown up in the jungles of Nicaragua. I said, I looked around and I looked at all these streets and these strange people speaking a strange language. And I looked up to Maria, my mama, and I said, Maria, this is leadership training. Yes, it is. Your life is leadership training. Those of us who have come from low-income backgrounds, me growing up a girl in the 40s and 50s, not only low income, but an immigrant, right? And so that's leadership training. And when you look at Latinos today, at the incredible power and energy that we have, that comes from our experiences. So I was really trained for leadership at a very young age. I had the opportunity this year to go to Albany, New York. And again, our community is so vibrant. And for the last 25 years, because, our heart is our young people, our heart is our children and our next generation. And for 25 years, Latinos in New York have been bringing it's a Puerto Rican organization. 250 Latinos go to Albany because it's the capital. It would be like coming to Denver to study and to meet people and to get together and really to prepare themselves to be leaders of the future. And we need to do that because in their lifetime, we're going to be 1 out of 3 Americans. And it's not just the numbers, it's how do we leverage the power and the beauty and the grace of our culture, bring it into the mainstream, help heal America, show America that the more diverse you are, because we're such a diverse community, and I'll talk a little more about that, that the more diverse you are, the more vibrant you are, the more creative you are. You know, nature loves a hybrid, and that's what we are. We're a mixture. We're mestizos. We're mulattos. We're all kinds of people from all different places. So here I'm talking to these youth, you know, and this is what happens. They're looking at their abuela. Están mirando una vieja, ¿verdad? And so how are you going to get 18-year-olds to identify with you? Well, you have to tell them what you were like when you were 18. And so, or in high school. So, you know, my mother was so brilliant that when I finished 8th grade at the Catholic school, she put me on a bus, took me across Tampa, Florida, because the banana boat landed in Tampa. That's the banana port. And she took me to see the Mother Superior. Well, you can imagine a 13-year-old girl going with her mother, first of all, across town, and then my mother in her broken English, sitting before the Mother Superior and telling her story, how she came here to this country so her children could have a better life. So she came here so her children could get educated. And she was such a deeply religious woman, you know, who believed that God had sent her here in order that I could be with you here today, that I could become somebody. And so the Mother Superior took one look at me and took one look at my mother, and she could not tell my mother no. And she said, I'll give her a half a scholarship. So my mother then, at the time, was also working on Sundays. She would get up at 5:30 in the morning, walk 8 blocks to school because we did not have a car, and to the church, which was also the school. And she would take care of children in the nursery from 6:15 Mass till the end of 12:15 Mass. And in her wisdom, she made me her assistant. And so my whole high school, I would get up with my mother on Sundays. I would walk to the church and we would watch children together. And I would get paid $15 a month, which I would give to the Mother Superior so I could become educated. That's about $150 a month today. Because 20 years later, when I went back to my high school reunion, I realized I had gone to the Academy Holy Names. I went to the Academy Holy Names. I didn't even know what a prep school was when I was a child. I just did what my mother told me, right? Because in those days, today it's a little bit different. I have a millennial, so it's a little bit different to raise your children today. But when I was growing up, if your parents said jump, we would say how high, right? We obeyed our parents. So anyway, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, because I think we do need to come to a more equitable society. We need to work on dominance, even with our children, because they have a lot to say, and I believe that you can learn so much from your children and from younger people. So I'm telling these high school kids this, why? Because I want them to know that you become a leader at a very young age. You prepare yourself for your life at a very young age. Lucky for me, I had my mother and my father and my family, because I never could have done that on my own, right? Working together is how we advance. And so I went to the Academy Holy Names. Now, check it out. My mother and father thought a high school degree was una buena educación. That was a good education in their minds, right? But I had gone to this school where they were preparing kids to go to college. And so my friends were going to college. Another lesson for you and for young people, dime con quién andas si te dices quién eres. We have to be with people and move our networks and be surrounded by people that are positive, that have vision, that want to make a contribution and that want to serve. So I ended up going to the University of Florida, and it was a shock to my parents, actually, because they didn't understand. But I have to tell you, I mean, how gracious of them. It brings almost tears to my eyes for them to say, my youngest daughter, my little daughter, she wants to get an education. And we're going to let her do that, because it really was, to them, me going 120 miles away without a chaperone and by myself, they could never have imagined that. But think of their grace and their vision to be able to support me in doing that. So then I worked my way through college. And so I'm telling these kids these stories to get them all excited about college, because they're going to be college bound and how they can do that. And I also told them one more story, and then we'll move on to something else. But when I went to the University of Florida, I entered in 1960. I never met another Latino. I've met 2 Latino men that were there since, because they became leaders as well. And we both agreed that if I would have met him, I probably would have married one of them because, there was nobody there, right? And the university was segregated. There were no Blacks. There were no African Americans. And so I'm sitting there, I'm 19 years old, I'm 20 years old, but this is about values. I was taught values by my family. I was taught that you respect everybody. I was taught that everybody's equal. I was taught that you help people when they're in need. You share what you have. And so I'm sitting at my dormitory, and I see my political science professor walking in this line with this group of people. And I didn't know what was going on. And I ran up to him and I said, Dr. Cantor, what are you doing? And he said, we are marching to integrate the University of Florida. So how did I become a leader? I stood up for what was right. I got in line. And I always tell people, it's been a lot of decades, but I'm still standing. So that's how you become a leader. And again, share your stories with young people, because when they see somebody who's accomplished or who's older, they don't know what you were like when you were young and what you did in order to become this business person or this teacher or work in a company or know internet and be an IT person. They don't know the journey. And the only way they know is for you to tell them the stepping stones, because you don't get here unless you walk the path to be able to get there. So that's kind of how I started as a young person. And yes, I joined the Peace Corps afterwards. Why did I do that? I felt so blessed. I felt almost like the hand of God was on me, because how could this immigrant girl from the jungles of Nicaragua end up, having the prize of a college education, less than 5% in the world. And back then it was probably, less than 1%. And so my mother had taught me, my parents had taught me, you have a responsibility to give back. You have a responsibility to take the talents that God gave you, to develop them, and to use them, to benefit others. And so I joined the Peace Corps. And what I want to tell you about this, because it's a lesson I take with me, and one of the reasons I do what I do today, because I do a lot of work with Latinos, really connecting us to our power and our values and our history and who we are, because we have such potential, but we have to be rooted in our traditions that got us to where we are today. And so I go to Chile. Imagine this. I had never seen a Latino bus driver. I had never had a Latino teacher. I had never, there was a couple little stores in the community I lived in, but not really a business person like we have today, that owns a company with employees and things like that. I just had never seen anybody in a position of influence or power. And I go to Chile. Now, this is not a surprise to you, but it was a surprise to a 21-year-old girl in the middle 60s. I go to Chile, and what happens? Everybody's Hispanic or Latino or Chileno, it's part of the family. And they run Land Chile, and they're the president of University of Chile, and they're the senators. And then they're Congress people, and they own all the big businesses, and they're the teachers. You know, I turn around and I say to myself, wait a minute, it certainly wasn't my culture. It wasn't it wasn't who we are that has put us in this position in the United States. And so what happened to me at a very young age, before Latinos became a force, remember, we weren't even declared a minority till 1977. This is at least 10 years before that. We had no identity even. I knew that we came from a great culture. I knew that there were some systemic educational things that were preventing. You know, you can look at me and say, oh, she must be really smart or this or had some breaks or whatever. And maybe that's true. But I'm 1 in a million. And why should that be true? Why should it not be true that so many of our young women and our children and so forth and so on don't finish school or don't get to go to a good university because they don't have the means or they didn't have they weren't prepared. And so I don't look at myself that way. I look at myself as, boy, if this happened to me, it should be happening to all Latinas and Latinos that have that kind of vision and fuerza and determination. And of course, the most important thing to me is to make a contribution. So that was my early life that set me on a path of leadership, I believe. And I came to Colorado after I went to graduate school. And I want to tell you the graduate school story as well before we move into some more things that have to do with business and leadership, because I want you to look back at your life. And I want you to think of a time and think of times when a door was open for you. Somebody gave you an opportunity. It might have been a high school counselor who said to you, no, you can do this. You can go to college. It might have been a coach that said, wow, you've got some potential here, and come on, let's join this team, and you're going to learn a lot about teamwork and leadership and working with others. It might have been, the person that you worked for as a young child that said to you, or as a teenager that said, wow, you're really smart. You can do this. So look back on the opportunities you've had in your life because a door opened for you. And I believe that's your destino calling you forward, telling you, come this way. Like I said, God only makes one thing one time. You're completely unique. I like to say you're a one-of-a-kind design. You're a one-of-a-kind design, an exceptional vision of the divine. Pump yourself up. That's part of leadership. I do it for people all the time. So I had married this wonderful man in the Peace Corps, and he was from Wisconsin. And I was going to be the good Hispanic wife and work while he went to law school. And so I went to the Department of Social Services to get a job. Now, I had been in Chile, and I was just pumped to the max because I had worked with women in the barrios and done what's today called micro enterprise. So we're all business people. We know about that. We know about micro enterprise, and we know that now today it is considered the major way that women in the world rise out of poverty. Doing small businesses, doing cooperatives, working together, selling these earrings that I bought from a micro enterprise group. So I had a cooking group and a baking group and a sewing group. And then the husbands came and said, can you help us? We can weld. I was doing small business enterprise work with them, teaching them how to sell, how to price things, how to market, how to work together. Sometimes I don't even know what happens when you get involved because all of a sudden the skills you need are there. So I say to this gentleman that I'm interviewing with, I want to get a job as a social worker, because that sounded, in those days, women were either social workers or teachers or nurses. Thank God that's opened up some now, but there's nothing wrong with those professions. They're wonderful and they take care of our society, but we do have more opportunities today as women. So he looks at me, and now you can imagine, I had a college degree. The first one in my lineage, in my ancestry to become educated. I had just come back from 2 years of doing international work. I thought I had it going on, And he looks at me and he says, I'm really sorry. I can see you're really talented, because I had brought all these papers from Chile showing pictures of me working with people, and I was on fire, right? And he says, I can see that, you just really would be good at this. He said, but we don't hire people here unless they have a master's in social work. And I looked at him and I thought, what? I mean, to me, this was like, what? And so I took all my papers and I put them down like that. And I said to him, you don't understand. I was born to be a social worker. And he was really frustrated. And he looked at me and he said, look, if you can go down to the University of Wisconsin, get yourself in the social work graduate program, we'll give you a stipend to go to school if you'll come back and work for us. Wasn't even my idea. That door opened for me. I had never even thought of that. I thought I was ready, right? But the fact is that at that time, for a Latina to get her master's degree, to come back to Denver and to begin working, I had learned so much, and I believe that's what makes us so effective as Latinos. We learn everything we need to learn about how to set up a business, do strategic planning, do the budgeting, do all these things that maybe didn't come naturally to us, but we learn them and we apply them. And so I believe that my early life set me on this path, and I want to invite you. And I do a lot of work with people on this, to look back on your life, to really look at those special times when you were put on a path. And as you look back now and say, that's how I got the idea to become a business person. That's how I learned, how to do more with less, That's how I learned customer service, because Latinos are people-oriented people. Our culture is a people culture. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I got to Colorado Springs, because then we're going to talk about leadership and also about entrepreneurship. So when I was at Mi Casa, I was there for 10 years, and I always tell people, especially millennials, because if you said to a millennial, you're going to be there for 10 years, and I actually was kind of like a millennial age at that time, they would walk out the door, because young people don't know how to make that kind of a commitment, because it's a third of their life. And so I say to them, you don't make that kind of commitment. We make a commitment to do the very best we can every single day. And when the day comes that it's for us to take a new step or another step, or our work has been completed, we'll open that door. But meanwhile, you do the best you can every day, right? That's leadership. So I was sitting at Mi Casa, and I'd been there 10 years, and I knew that I could be there the rest of my life. Mi Casa's over 40 years old now. And the women would still be coming to get GEDs, or to get a job, or to learn English, or to deal with a domestic violence situation. And the young people, because I started a program to keep young Latinas in high school, would still need help, because the schools aren't culturally supportive. And I said, what is the solution here to our community? And the answer I got was leadership. That we need to create leaders across this country that are Latinos. Leaders who bring our values and our experience forward. Leaders who have a vision of a different kind of society. A society that takes care of its people like we do with each other, right? A society that's generous, where people make a living wage. There's a saying in Spanish, donde come uno, come dos, where one person eats, two people can eat. And that means, and you watch it, Latinos have their food and it's like, pruébalo. They want you to have some, right? The thing is, we're not comfortable eating if somebody else doesn't have. We'd rather share our food. That's the culture we come from. Mi casa, su casa, the generosity that we have. The fact that we're a humanistic culture that cares about people. The fact that we love diversity, and that we come in all colors and from 22 countries. So we need to bring those values into the mainstream, but we can't do that unless we have influence, unless we learn to be leaders, and unless we have organizations that can harness the power of our numbers and our culture. So as I was sitting there thinking about that, I got a call from Frank Solis from Coors Company. It was Coors Company then. And he said, Juana, we're thinking of starting a leadership program for Hispanic women. Would you be interested in doing it? Now you all are going like, who is this woman that she gets these kind of phone calls? But you got to remember, this is the 1980s and there ain't much going on in our community. And, so therefore I would be the person that they would call because this was the first Hispanic women's organization in the state. And we were doing really well. We had bought 2 houses. I always say that when Latino women do it, we do it right. Anyway, so I this is a values thing. I said, I would love to do this and I think it's the answer, but they were having a lot of problems with the union. And I said, I believe in people having at least the choice to vote, whether they want a union or not. I said, it's a big issue in the Latino community. We've had issues with Coors, and I just don't think I can do this. Now, in retrospect, as you look back on that, I think, Juana, you probably could have done this because it's so important for Latinos to be prepared for leadership. And, but I was young, and he called me back 3 months later, and he said, Juana, we settled with the union. Would you do it now? That's another Destino thing, right? You prepare yourself, you get ready, you try every day and do your best, and the opportunities will come. So that's how I got to be the head of the Hispana Institute and worked, and then became working nationally, which was very difficult because when you work in community, people are pretty much motivated by helping the community and working together. There's some alligators nationally that you have to deal with. I won't say anything else about that, but I got something from Coors that most people don't get in the nonprofit sector, and most of us that start small businesses don't get. And that was, I got 6 months to study leadership, and I got money to travel and to look at different leadership programs. And what did I find? The Center for Creative Leadership right there in Colorado Springs. And why did I think that was so important? Because we need to know what corporate executives know. If we're really going to be good at our businesses, if we're really going to be good at growing our organizations, and we can do it, we can incorporate those skills. And so all of these young Latinas, over 800, attended the center. And after 7 years, they asked me if I would like to come and be part of the staff. And again, like I said, that was a great honor. And I got to work with people with PhDs in leadership and really hone my skills. So keep learning and keep trying. The other thing I just want to say, by the way, when you look at your family and so forth, people ask me, Juana, why did you think you could write books? Well, when I went to the Center for Creative Leadership and started studying leadership, I believe our leaders are so incredibly dedicated and relentless. And, leadership in the Latino community is a lifelong commitment. You may change your role, you may do different things, but your commitment to your community is lifelong, right? And so anyway, I just lost my train of thought. By the way, I was going to tell you all this. I know I can talk, like a parrot, but I don't usually talk about myself. I usually talk about my mission and leadership and what we need to do as Latinos, because I've been taught as a Latino leader that you shouldn't really talk about yourself that much. But here goes. So yes, so I go to study leadership, and there's no books about Latino leaders. They don't know that we have an immigrant spirit, that we love diversity, that our leadership form is kind of an activist form, right? They don't know about who we are as leaders. And so that's how I got the impetus to start writing and to start thinking about leadership from our perspective. And my book, The Power of Latino Leadership, was the first one on that. So when I was at the center, I realized that we needed a company that taught leadership to our people and that used the same kind of tools that the Center for Creative Leadership did. And so I started my company 25 years ago, and it's called Mestiza Leadership International. Mestiza meaning a person of mixed race, a multicultural person. I think to have a successful business, first of all, you have to have passion. You have to really want to do it because it's such hard work. And of course, when you start off, you have to do everything. You don't have the kind of support you need. So you really have to follow your heart's desire and believe in your business and believe in what you're doing. Second of all, I think you have to have that whole sense of service because all businesses really depend on their customers, on providing good services. And the interesting thing in business, you have to do it every single day because referrals and people talking about your business and wanting to tell other people about it is how you can really grow. The other thing, and I think this is a Latino advantage, is you have to build your networks and relationships. Like I said, Latino leadership is a lifelong commitment. So, our relationships are lifelong. And so, whether we're doing our business or we're working in a school or whatever we're doing, the people that we know in our community, we're going to keep knowing them all of our lives. Then always deliver con ganas, con orgullo, always do your best. And I think Latinos also have that sense of pride, right? Because we were told that, always do your best, con ganas. And that's the extra effort we bring. The other thing Latinos love to do is we love to work. I used to think, oh, Juana, you're a workaholic. And then my friend Rufina said, nope, you just love to work. That's why Latinos have the highest participation of any group in the labor market. That's why, we are succeeding and we are moving forward because we're such hard workers and we love to work and to contribute through work. And then I think the last thing that's so important is to really think about your legacy. What is it you want to leave behind? Not just your business, but, how many lives you're going to touch? How many young people are you going to inspire? When you leave, and this is something that's true in leadership, not just for Latinos, but for Anglos as well. Stephen Covey says, honor the vision of what you will become. Honor the legacy that you will leave because it gives purpose and meaning to your life and it will inspire you to keep on keeping on. So I hope a few of these things have been helpful to you. I know Joe has some questions and I want to see if I covered everything that I had on my notes here for all of you. And what I might say as a how-to is to go back and look at your journey, to acknowledge the strength and power of our culture, to keep on thinking about how you can grow and learn every day, and to keep inspiring others. So, Joe, do we have a few questions?
Yes, we do, Juana. Waiting to go back over to a split screen and we'll ask a few questions here. All right. Here's a great question. We as community leaders in our communities, as Latinos, what would you say are the important steps for us to take to have more of a voice and be more influential and be of service on what I would call those boards of influence?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think boards, chambers of commerce just drive decision making in our community. And how do we have more of a presence so we look more like our demographic of our communities?
Well, I think what's important, again, is that we need to be bicultural to be successful, meaning, well, we already are, because a lot of us have different cultures within our families, but we need to learn the Anglo system and we need to learn the rules of power. So I'll give you an example from my life. I had the opportunity to work with the Colorado State Chamber of Commerce way back, I think in the 90s, on their strategic plan for the state of Colorado. And so it was all white males and one other Latina, one Black person, and one woman. And the rest were actually Peter Coors and Dick Kirk, who was the head of United Bank at the time, were the chairs. So how do you work with a group like that? First of all, I was scared to death. And so the first thing I did was I stood there before I went in the room and I pumped myself up. I really believe in self-talk. You have to really believe in yourself. And when I was young, I would write affirmations in order to reprogram myself, because when you're an immigrant going through school, when you're poor, and you don't really think you have the right stuff. I'm trying to tell you through my talk, you do have the right stuff. In fact, we've got a lot of power because of our experiences. So I stood outside the room. I took a deep breath and I said, Juana, for you to sit in that room with those men, Peter Coors, who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, other people who have gone to these, prestigious and elite universities, who were given trust funds, etc. For you to walk in that room and sit with them, and I want you all to say it with me, we got it going on. You don't walk in like, oh, pobrecito, que they let me sit here. Oh no, you walk in ready, dressed, prepared, do your homework, and you sit down, because we are representing a tremendous culture with tremendous energy, gifts, and experience. The second thing is, for example, is that, Latinos have a lot of passion. And what I realized when I was sitting there and as I studied the rules of power is that kind of scares them, because they don't have that kind of passion. I realized that regardless if they were Democrats or Republicans or had different businesses or were in competition at times, they were all going to get in their fancy cars and drive back to Castle Pines. The stakes for people in power are very low. For us, the stakes are very high, right? So you have to kind of gauge that passion and use it at the right time. So they would say things like, I'd like to revisit that. Just very calmly, when you have an idea and they don't listen, you go like, I'd like to revisit that. One of the other things I learned is that you win some and you lose some. That's part of the rules of power. And you have to have objectives when you go into these board meetings. So my objective was, number one, to get the State Chamber of Commerce to approve bilingual education. Number two, at that time, because I believe that political power is so important for Latinos. And at that time, you couldn't register to vote before 25 days before an election. Or no, the voting was cut off 25 days before an election. And I wanted that changed. And the third thing was we used to have a nuclear plant outside of Denver in Arvada. And it did close finally, but that was one of the things I wanted, because it did actually poison the water table, by the way, and they've had cancer cases and so forth. That's a different story. So we're coming to the end to vote on all these things people have proposed, and the businessmen chose that I did a business case on why bilingual education was so important, right? Today, the United States is the fastest growing Spanish-speaking country in the world. We're becoming bilingual. And that's good because you use more of your brain, you can connect to 22 countries across the world, etc. The thing on voting passed because most people in power understand that, you should have people give access to the ballot box, but not Rocky Flats. And so Peter Coors said to me, Juana, what do you think about that? And I said, Peter, you win some and you lose some. And you know what he knew then? I was a player because I had studied the rules and I knew the rules of power. And so do your homework. That's always important. Always arrive early, because Latinos, we don't do that. And you need to arrive early with your book open, ready for business, having read the agendas. You need to really step up your game when remember this, you're representing all of your people. When you get a seat at the table, and not many Latinos have that seat, you're representing your people. So you have to really think about that. And so those are some of the things that I learned on how you really become influential. But the other thing is, I got a lot of my opportunities through volunteering, whether it was being on the Servant Leader Board or the International Leadership Association Board. Pick your battles, pick where you want to have influence. But you will meet people that will grow your business, that will help you, that will open doors, and eventually even become your allies and your partners. I can't hear you.
Another question for you, Juana.
Sure.
As you know, for small businesses, we have a group of what we would call emerging leaders in our community, Latino leaders. What would you say to them to convince them and inspire them to take those next steps, understanding that they run a small business, but in order to serve, you're sacrificing some time for the good of our community? What would you say to them to take that next step to serve our community, whether it be in a leadership program, a board capacity, so we can have more of us serving throughout the community versus a handful, which creates a challenge?
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, Joe, but folks need to know that I'm currently serving as a volunteer with Lideramos, the National Alliance for Latino Leadership. And Joe and I have talked about starting a leadership program in Colorado Springs. And I think that is absolutely key. It doesn't have to be the Chamber of Commerce business program, that it just needs to be that people come together, that they start learning and sharing and reading, because in that way you do learn some of these skills on how to be an effective leader and how to, it'll translate into your business. I don't want you to separate, here's my business and here's the community, here's my volunteer work and here's my business work, because in reality, you really will get business from your nonprofit or your community work, right? And so you should choose carefully how you're going to do that. But the reason I think it would be good for the group that's listening, working with Joe and working with Lideramos, to think about a leadership program in Colorado Springs once the COVID thing is cured, is because the community will change its perception of who Latino leaders are or who Latinos are. Because when you get a group like that together and you have an opening reception to introduce 20 or 25 leaders to the community, right? And you have a mentoring program, and you have a program where they get put on different boards, you really do pop the influence. And that's why I've been doing leadership since 1986 for our community. That's my commitment, to create as many leaders as we can, because I believe in that. But more than that, I believe that we're needed as leaders. And so it is hard work. So choose things you're really passionate about, because if you're passionate, like I said, I work all the time because I'm not working. Right now, I am not working. I am doing my passion. I'm doing what I love. I'm going to do a presentation. I did a presentation for the University of Tennessee on Wednesday. I wasn't working. I was so inspired by those students. So if you can find your passion, I know it's hard, but it doesn't drain you. It actually gives you energy.
Great. Very good. Another question from one of our guests. What type of advocacy and support do you think our Hispanic business owners need today?
Advocacy, you mean like the Hispanic Chamber advocating for changes?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That is a really good question. I think the hardest thing that has been, I think, to market ourselves. And now with technology, this has been really difficult, because you're on such a high learning curve now, without being able to serve your customers. So marketing has always been, I think, difficult. How do you get the word out about your business? How do you, I have a successful company, I think. I've had it for 25 years. But I've never broken into being like the Center for Creative Leadership. And a lot of times I get really upset with like the Kellogg Foundation that gave them like a $9 million grant. And I'm thinking to myself, that's great. The center's wonderful. But think of what we could do if one of our organizations got a $9 million grant to train Latino leaders. So one of the issues we have, and that's why the chambers are so important, is that we can't go to scale. And so we're competing with people that have been around longer or that have a bigger reputation. And so people are drawn to that. And so how do we come together and really learn how to market ourselves, how to grow? I am all for, 2 or 3 businesses coming together and figuring out a strategic plan, because Latinos have got to go to scale. That's the only way we're going to break into that next level. And so as good as my company is, I feel like I've never been able to get to the place where I own my own training center or that kind of thing. We're busy, and I have consultants I work with, and it's been great. And of course, my books do really well, so I get asked to speak and to share because of becoming an author. But that's the biggest problem I think we have, is how do we get the word out about how good we are? How do we grow the business? How do we go to scale? Latinos, we've never had those kind of huge, big companies. They're few and far between. So that's another skill we need to learn. And I would encourage people to think about forming partnerships, because that's another way of growing and going to scale. I can't hear you.
They keep muting me here. We're getting close to the end here. But it's been a pleasure to listen to you today. Our guests really enjoyed your talk. And what would you like to leave us? What inspiring message would you like to leave us with today before we end the show?
Well, there's a quote by the Nielsen report that I can send you that says that any business that wants to grow today has to consider the Hispanic market, the $1.7 trillion Hispanic market. And I think what we need to do is really to start doing, and the Jewish community has been really good at this, supporting our businesses, finding out who in your community does printing or cleaning or, has a training firm or an accounting firm. We have got to make that commitment to support each other economically and to grow our economic base. And I think that's why the chambers are so important in bringing people together. It's an economic commitment that we need to make today. And so I hope that through my talk, first of all, you get inspired to go to the next level as a leader, but also get inspired to be more of a contributor in our community and to really support each other, because we're on a journey together. And when we become 1 out of 3 Americans in the lifetime of your children, I would like to see not just great numbers, but great influence and power from the Latino community.
Great message, Juana. We really appreciate your time today. I look forward to staying connected to you. I'm grateful for having the opportunity to be a Leader Ramos Fellow. We provided the information to our membership and our network about the National Latino Leadership Symposium.
Wonderful.
And we hope that we have some of our guests and members take advantage of that opportunity. But I look forward to staying connected. We want to continue to grow our chamber, and I think this inspiring message today will help us continue to move in that impactful direction that we want to go. So thank you very much, and thank you for our guests for being here today, our title sponsor, Alpha Elite Plumbing and Heat, and our event sponsor today, the Springs Funeral Service. Thank you again, Juana.
Yes. Que Dios te bendiga.
Thank you.